United with Stream, which is an amazing charity event that was put together, and it was basically DJs, all socially isolated. So I'll always remember it for the rest of my life because it was the first time I'd been out of the house, and it was just quite overwhelming, you know, seeing like more than 3 people. That massive wall of equipment that you had, you know, all the screens, and it was like a shock to the system. But there was 500,000 people watching it at one point.
So visually, you were alone, but actually, you weren't. You had nearly 500,000 people with you at that moment. It was a very weird kind of juxtaposition between those two things. Back in the 1960s and 70s, the fanzine era, pirate radio, all that alternative media culture, a lot of it really lent itself to digital technologies and creating those media experiences, those bespoke media experiences. So for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about your journey, knowing me, I guess, where we first met, and then I think straight into United We Stream, I guess, because that's where it got really intense, didn't it?
Yeah, well, so I'm Clint, I'm a broadcaster, musician, DJ, father of 5. And yeah, I first met you, I think it was like 10 or 11 years ago. We met underneath somebody's Christmas tree in, was it Cheadle or something like that?
Yeah, Cheadle.
Switching somebody's lights on.
That's a great story. We met under a Christmas tree.
Literally lay flat on our backs under a Christmas tree, switching the lights on.
That's right.
For somebody.
Yep.
Bizarre and not very rock and roll.
He's still friends with him now.
Yeah, Joe McGrath, the living legend.
And then,
the next time I passed across was during the pandemic. United with Stream, which is an amazing charity event that was put together, and it was basically DJs, all socially isolated, I think, is that what they called it? Social distancing. And like lots of DJs performing in the Met in Bury. So I'll always remember it for the rest of my life because it was the first time I'd been out of the house to anything, to anywhere, apart from going out for your 1 hour walks that you're allowed to have. And I can't remember what month it was, but it's probably 3 or 4 months into the pandemic. And I remember driving out, I live in Stockport, so I was driving anti-clockwise on the M60 towards Bury, you know, past Ashton and Oldham and all these, Middleton, and just, it was insane. There was just no cars on the road. I was the only person on that stretch of the M60 for the 30 minutes so that it took me to get to Bury. And bearing in mind also at this point, I'd not been around anybody else apart from my family, because I was broadcasting my radio show from home every day. So it's me, my wife, and 3 kids that live with us, and a lot of animals. That was the only contact I'd had with anybody. And then suddenly, I'm greeted by somebody at the Met in Bury, and then I walked into that beautiful room, and it's all black, and there's a stage with the DJ set up on it, and you and your gang, and it was just quite overwhelming, you know, seeing like more than 3 people. Like, I think it might have been half a dozen of you, again, all socially distanced, and that massive wall of equipment that you had, you know, all the screens, and it was like a shock to the system. And then I stood there basically and performed for maybe an hour, half an hour, I can't remember how long the set was. But there was 500,000 people watching it at one point. I got a message off Sasha, one of the organisers, saying, "You are now being watched by 500,000 people."
It was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was massive. There was a moment actually in that, I remember, because you'd emailed me before to try and dig out a photograph of Mr. Wilson, and because you had that moment in there where you played the tune.
Yeah, Mike Garry. It's Mike Garry, a poem that he wrote, St. Anthony, about Anthony Wilson.
That's
right. It was quite emotional, wasn't it, that?
Well, so this is the thing, is at that point, we'd panned the camera kind of off you on, I think we pulled out actually, but it showed you performing to an empty space.
Yeah.
So visually, you were alone, but actually, you weren't. You had nearly 500,000 people with you at that moment. It was a very weird kind of juxtaposition between those two things. So it leads to my question really, which was, obviously you're a very established musician, and you were kind of around when there wasn't a digital age.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that's been like, growing yourself creatively from not having that type of technology, tapes and vinyl and wax carvings, I don't know, whatever it was, but
it's been incredible.
Tell us about that journey, yeah.
Because I mean, when I started when I started listening to music as a kid, it was all vinyl. There wasn't even cassette tapes. cassette tapes arrived in my world in 1969, 70, 71 maybe. Before that, it was just records. And we had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, but that wasn't really about music. It was more speech and us recording our budgies and things like that. We had some birds, not the lovebirds, I think they were called, but I've still got the tapes at home. You can just see these birds twittering in the background. But yeah, so it's all vinyl at the beginning, and then, you know, by the time I started as a teenager, I got the cassette tapes and got into that technology. But when the band started, when I joined the Inspirals, which was 86, 87, I think I joined. 86, I started recording them, doing demos for them as a producer. 1987, I joined the band. And cassette tapes then were like a great way of us recording our music and giving it away, you know, decent quality recordings. And that combined with fanzine culture, which at the time was quite big. That was our internet. You know, you'd buy the tapes from Boots for like 75p or whatever. You'd copy your music onto these tapes, and then you'd send them out to fanzines around the country. And fanzine culture back then, it was incredible because you'd have a gig at the Boardwalk in Manchester. So you'd have like maybe 3 or 4 local kids selling their fanzines, you know, one from Oldham, one from Rochdale, wherever. But then you'd have people coming up from Brighton because they'd be coming to see this band, you know, Crazy Head or whatever. People from Brighton would come up and they'd be selling their fanzine, and people from Glasgow. And then the fanzine people would be swapping them free with each other. So it was literally the internet. It was like our internet at the time.
It's interesting because you talked about those tapes, those demo tapes.
Yeah.
Let me just, I think we're going to go back and forth in time here, but let's fast forward to me trying to become a general in the Boon Army with Patreon.
Yeah.
And all that. You can actually see the parallels between those two situations.
Yeah, well, Patreon was quite a recent thing for me. Again, I started doing it late on in the pandemic as a way of motivating myself to keep making new music, because I promised my Patreon followers, you know, for £5 a month, you'll get one brand new track every month. If you're giving me £10, you know, if you're generous enough to be a £10 a month subscriber, you'll get a bit more content and interaction, whatever. So it was the best thing about Patreon for me. One is it was great to get my new music out there, but it was also a brand new technology to learn at my age, along with Etsy, where I was selling art online, and Shopify, which is merchandise. So I had to do a lot of learning again in the pandemic, just to keep my family fed. You know what I mean?
But this is it. I think that this is where the questions are going. Really, is that you look at your creativity as a musician, as an artist, culturally, and all that sort of stuff. Actually, there needs to be something special in regards to how you can then take technology and be digitally creative, and that's obviously something we're very proud of as a company.
Yeah.
We like to call ourselves digital creatives. You could be any age, you can come from any walk of life and be a digital creative, but how important do you think it is to have a company like Badger and Combes around that's able to kind of push and generate and get you going to say, actually, there is lots more you could do and stuff?
Yeah, it's essential that a company like yours is around, because I'm at the stage now where over the last few years it's been all right to just do a video on your phone or, you know, to your mate's phone. But now a lot of what I'm going to be doing in the new year and beyond, I want it to look better and be more professionally put together. You know, not just the quality of the image, but the editing, etc. So I've got a few ideas which, you know, at some point we'll probably end up working together on.
And you look at that kind of, when you talk about the fanzine, and we talk about alternative media quite a lot, and a lot of what we bring to these tangible, real, authentic media experiences is what you were doing during United We Stream. It was authentic because everybody was sharing in the same moment. And when you look at back in the 1960s and 70s, the fanzine era, pirate radio, all that alternative media culture, a lot of it really lends itself well to digital technologies and creating those media experiences, those bespoke media experiences.
Yeah.
So you think about how big maybe like the Inspiral fan base is there room, do you think, for kind of connecting to individual types of Inspiral fans in different ways and things like that? And is that something you think maybe you've got an edge on because during the pandemic you were connected to that digital technology side of things?
I think so. I think for a bloke of my age, I mean, I'm 64, I'll be 65 in June, so I think for a bloke of my age, I'm a bit more advanced because I've been in that world of, you know, doing commercial radio for 28 years, you know, being around those machines and that social media that's constant while you're on air. And I think, like I said, going through the pandemic and having to arm myself with new skills. And I think I'm enjoying the fact that over the next 10 years, there'll be a lot of new stuff happening that I'm going to be able to embrace and use. And I think, like you're saying there about certain aspects of our culture, which over the years, you might feel like we're losing. You know, people fell out of love with vinyl, and now it's more popular than ever. You know, it's nice to see people moving back to tactile stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that.
And even, you know, the world of podcasting, who'd have thought when podcasts started, who'd have thought that in 2023, podcast is another word for an event to 2,000 or 3,000 people that bought a ticket to see two people chatting shit or whatever. It's like that as a development, you know, our podcasting has become so huge. It's incredible, isn't it? Because that podcast you had it on your iPod, didn't you? It was like incredible. So what I'm saying, I'm excited, and I feel very privileged that I've seen the changes that I've seen over 50 or 60 years as a music consumer and a music maker. But I'm so excited about the next decade or two as well, if I can make it that far as well and see what's happening next. Dead excited.
From your sort of experiences of myself and Badgering Combes and there's other things that we've found ourselves on, like mares battles and all sorts of things.
About that,
there's another,
wasn't it?
There's so many, But from your experiences of being around the Badgers and stuff like that, so if you could say to anybody why they should engage with us, why they should join on our crazy journey together, what would you tell them?
Not only would I say the equipment is second to none, it's all, you know, the gear you've got is incredible. You've got a great collection in it, and it's all yours. It's not hired in, it's all yours, this gear, isn't it? You bought it with your own hard-earned money. So the equipment is second to none, but it don't feel corporate. I don't feel like I'm dealing with a corporation. And it feels, I know it's a family base, it's you and your partner in it, but it feels like you've got a great team, a lot of very soulful, passionate characters. That's why I did them all a cow drawing during the pandemic.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
I sent them all a little cow. I started selling cow art and that to make a bit of money, and I was impressed with you all enough to send them all cow pictures.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which then sat in I think they sat in an empty post box, didn't they, for about 2 months? Because there's no postman.
I remember that, yeah. I've got mine's on up in my office at home. Yeah. I think Katie's got hers on the wall out there actually as well. So yeah, I remember that. And that was like that creativity just comes out of you, doesn't it? Like in those moments, that creativity. I think
a big part of it was necessity, because I lost, my main income as an events DJ, club DJ. So when I saw the pandemic started, I saw these gigs getting cancelled for the next 16 months, like 130 grand's worth of work just gone out of my diary. Fortunately, I managed to keep the radio show going from home, which was nice. That brought a bit of money in, but it just meant that I had a lot of time on my hands to start creating other income streams, which is exactly what I remember my dad doing in the 60s when I was a kid. You know, he had a window cleaning round. He'd do, if neighbours had rats, he'd borrow a shotgun and shoot the rats for a bit of money. You know, it was just like anything to keep those pennies coming in. And I think during the pandemic, I just became a bit more like my dad. You know,
but in the digital age.
Just what tools I've got around me, and let's learn how to use this.
That's really interesting, because a lot of people, Clint, don't have that skill set.
Yeah,
I can't.
I think everybody's got it. It's just not everybody will believe that they can pull it off.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are. If you spent all your life as a welder, you're not going to go and learn what Patreon is or Etsy or whatever. But I always use this analogy about. I'm lucky the kind of work I do. I don't consider it to be work, as like your average welder. But one of my mates is a welder, and during the pandemic, or just for the pandemic, he left the job he had. He was welding trailers, for big trucks or whatever. And he either left or got let go. But he set himself up, like just making beautiful bits of art out of like metal welding, and he started selling it online, and he's gone through the roof with it.
And I bet he could be doing some videos about his passion for welding.
Yeah.
And then it all kicks in there. It goes onto YouTube, goes onto Facebook, Twitter, and all that kind of, X, whatever they call it. But it all goes into that space, doesn't it? And I think a lot of people, they kind of look at digital, they look at data, they get very scared by it. Privacy and all that kind of, it's a thing that people worry about a lot, but if used right and if connected to right, I think there's a massive place for digital creativity in this world around us, and the kind of how people can, I mean, that's the whole point, is Badgering Combes accelerated out of the pandemic as a result of this digital creativity that we had. You know, United We Stream played a massive part in that, in doing that. So we kind of adapted and used that digital space for us to do it. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to bringing you on more of that journey as we go. You know, it's going to be amazing.
I've got some big ideas.
Yeah, we're going to take on the world, Clint. We'll take on the world. We'll take them all on.
Then I guess we worked a lot closer together when we looked to pivot the event online. It was just before a little something called COVID happened. You remember that? We chose to do 2 weeks of content, live broadcast, in a purpose-built studio that we built. And it was such an interesting experience. We'd never done that before. We knew that our audience needed to know what's happening in the sector. We needed to find a way to bring people together at that time, even if they were working from home.
For us, it was great to be working with somebody that was entrusting us to go on that journey with them, and I think the risk and to be able to take that risk in a calculated way. When you look at what happened with COVID, a lot of companies just shut up and stopped moving at all. A lot of industries stopped. We were very keen to use our digital prowess to keep things going.
I don't know how much I can say about this. There's some big plans for next year.